Okay. We're recording. We're recording. So I'm sorry I'm doing this in the echoey room and I'm doing this live, but we're going to talk about Flask WTF. Oh, maybe the reverb is somehow pleasant. I doubt it. Um, so, when we last left our intrepid heroes, we had nominally written an app.py file. Oops. That could use Flask to take input and generate output. We're going to look at the input part today. So let's click on this. New task. This is our input form. This is made in input.html by going through and writing the material HTML to get this stuff. Now, part of the computer science mantra is don't repeat yourself. There's a lot of this structured text, this formatted text that is redundant. Uh, our IDs and tasks, our IDs and names are almost always identical because it's easier to refer to them here. This is the ID if we were going to need to find it in the web page. This is the name that it's referred, the variable comes back to in the Python context. There's a lot of just like manual text. We're going to look at a way to abstract away some of these pieces. That is called what the forms. So, WT forms. And again, we're going to look at our quick start here. If you can read this, you are welcome to. They're human words designed to be as clear as possible. We're going to take this new software, a new batch of robot parts for our robot, that is going to extend our Flask app, extend our app robot that we made earlier. That's what they mean by integration with WT Forms. WT Forms is a bunch of software that does basically the translation of code commands. It's a bunch of code that creates the HTML that makes forms. So we're going to skip the specific imports right now, but it's important to recognize that we are importing things. But this becomes a form with a single entry. This is one I made for a sample IA where you create. It's for basically office hour scheduling. Am I running out of a main? No, I'm running out of a init. Oh, I have to stop running you. And then I could run you. My mistake. Never mind. So, this is a form that takes some text, which is a string field, and it takes 2 bits of time, and there's a pull down menu to select courses. That's all that's going on here. What makes Flask powerful is it allows us to both define a form element in one line as opposed to in a lot of lines. But more importantly is that it lets us do it in Python rather than in HTML. If we're writing code in Python, a lot of these libraries, their goal is saying like, well, I know that to make a web page, you have to use all this other stuff. But wouldn't it be great if you could just use some Python and then that Python will make the other stuff for you? So that's what we're going to do here. And I'm going to do it by modifying this piece right here. So I'm going to come back into my project and I'm going to go into my main folder and I'm going to make a new file and I'm going to call it forms.py. You don't necessarily need to do these things in extra files, but I find that it makes it really helpform and clear for me. So we're going to start importing some things. Flask WTF import Flask form. So Flask form is the big robot part that we're making out of the Flask WTF boxes. I'm gonna have to check my own notes because I don't remember all the parts. Ugh, that's terrible. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to leave the rest of my pieces out here, and I'm going to start thinking about what I actually want to make. Now, looking at this piece, student name seems like a good place to start. If I look at input.html, I see that student name is a input type text. Flask WTF string field. So the way to start is to make a form object. So we're going to come back over here to our forms.py and we're going to say class, and it is of type form. We'll call this task entry and we'll make it a form. Now, this is the equivalent of setting up this part. We've made a form. We've defined a top and bottom, and then we're going to move on and do the stuff that's inside of it. Now, what's one of those things in here? We can say, first thing we want to do is the name itself. So because it's going to be a Python object, we're going to call it with the constructor, and then we're going to give it a variable. So the variable name. So what did we call these things? Student name is what we called it? Sure. String field is a type of form element. If you look here, all of the things that you can import from WT Forms, not all of them, a lot of them, are different types of fields. Select multiple, date time field, decimal point. All of the different things that you can do in HTML to make a form object, there exists as a class, as a class here that we're going to bring in. So I'm going to bring in a string field. What things go in a string field? Let's find out. This first part is the text, the label we're going to put in. So I'm going to say student name. Great. What's the next thing? Validators. This is the other thing that we get from Flask WTF. When you ask the universe or users to give you data, they don't always give you the data the way you want it. So how can we validate student names? Well, if we had a list of students that we could check them against, that would be one way to do it. We can define a max length in case you hate people with long names. So this validator from dot validators import data required. So this is our you gotta write something. Data required is a thing that says it does not really matter what you write there, but you've got to write something. Now, we're kind of in the don't repeat yourself category here, but we can see that now each of our field elements, we are defining the Python name that we're going to use here, the part that's going to be displayed here, and then we are just going through and putting particular restrictions on them. Now, we have not thought a ton about the different restrictions. And here's a new one, task detail. What was it supposed to be? It was supposed to be just kind of longer text writing, right? So if we look back on here, this is a string field, this is a string field, this is a text area because it gives us a larger box. It's a different HTML structure. This one's got the little drag on the bottom. So if I wanted to make it bigger, I could. If I wanted to make it smaller, I could. That is a property of this HTML element that is there because it is in HTML terms. If I go back to import input.html right now, it is task detail is a text area. So here, when I'm in Formsify, I'm going to call it a text area field. There we go. And you can see that we start by having 4 rows and 50 columns. That's the starting default size of the box. Now this is our radio select field. That's this one right here. In a radio select field, I have the label and then I have the choices. And you can see here, this is this part that's displayed. Why don't I make that smaller? So now I can put those things in there, and that will change the display thing, but this is the value that's being returned. So, and again, the only validator I have here is that they have to make a choice. So the other one I need is a select field and a submit field. So again, it is true that I'm adding a bunch of new syntax and new complexity. But the argument is that this complexity is going to reduce or eliminate some other complexity for us. So here we have now defined a class called our task entry form. How do we actually go and use it? Well, am I still on my own branch? Good, I'm on my own branch. How are we going to go and change this? Well, where do we use input.html right now? It's right here. And we don't do anything in this route. All of the work, input.html, has been just made for us. It's just a bunch of static HTML files right now. This is just all just flat static text. We're going to make this dynamic, so we're going to change some things in here. We need to take this object, this task entry, and we need to make one of them. This is now a recipe for a robot, a specific robot, and we need to build one of those. Now, one of the things that's true is that I have to have in my app.py knowledge of what's going on here in this other file, this forms.py file. So I have to say from forms import, nope, what did I call it? Task entry. There we go. Not a particular field. I'm bringing in this whole recipe for this type of form. So I'm going to say task form equals task entry. What am I missing on my parameters for that? What did I just? Oh, I get confused on that 0 versus oh. Man, I really can't. Yeah, so I don't need another parameter in there. Task enter. And now I can pass task form equals task form down to the page. So what does this change here? Well, let me make a change here so I don't completely break this. And I'll make a new template called input WTF.html so we can keep them separate. So what needs to come over from here? Well, none of this stuff. We're still extending base. We're still in a block called content. But now we need to use the fact that we are giving it this object called task form. Oh, yeah, I'll do that one part at the end. I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to put it in here now, but we'll come back to it. Oh, I forgot that we do have some structure there. So, come back to this. So here's our form field set, and here's our field set. So we still have the same structure of a HTML form. But now we're going to put these pieces in. Instead of doing, we can still call it, we still have a legend tag. This is the detail. But now this is what the form looks like. Except I called it task form instead of just form. So I am passing this task form object down to the HTML page and using something akin to Jinja, I'm saying, hey, that task form thing doesn't have a student name object, and it does. This is my task entry. My task form is a particular robot built onto this lesson. And it does, in fact, have a field called student name. So what I'm calling here is I'm saying, hey, give me that task form robot that I just built, and now give me the student name, and now I want the label. So what is the label? It's going to be this text. This is the label property, just like in CMU. And then instead of asking for a particular thing, I say task form dot student name. Give me that thing at a particular size. And the same is true for all of these. Oops. Where's my replace in here? Where's replace in here? There we go. So what changes on this side? If this is where we are now asking for all the data, in our current program, the data was heading back to a particular spot. It was heading back to this save task root. And we pulled the task data out of this request to arguments dictionary. What's different about this in Flask WF form? Well, first off, we have a question we can ask. We can say, if form what's the actual so now, sorry, not tested. So now instead of taking this request.args and putting it to this, we put it into request.args. And our things in here don't change too terribly much. We take our data, put it in this form, and now we can access the things by the dictionary keys just like we did before. Now, Yeah, I think I'm going to stop from here.